From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. I'm Tyne Morgan, and here's what we're working on for you over the next 60 minutes. Crop conditions continue to fade, but is it enough to move the markets? Devastating drought deepens the pain in the northern plains, eating into the hay supply.
Some of it's a bale an acre, some of it's a little more, some of it's less. It's not real good.
And these farmers are resorting to drastic measures to cope. He's a fresh face on the farm, but he bleeds tradition.
It's just in our blood. We can't get rid of it. It's just something we really, really enjoy.
We'll introduce you to tomorrow's top producer of the year. And in John's world,
Microsoft and rural broadband.
U.S. Farm Report, brought to you by the dependable, long-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Now for the market-related news, a failed Trans-Pacific partnership is coming at a cost. This time, it's meat exports to the United States' #1 customer, and the U.S. meat industry receiving very short notice of the move. Japan announcing Friday it's raising the tariffs on frozen beef from 38.5% to 50% on August 1st. It's not just the U.S. seeing a rate hike, and Japan says the action is to protect its own producers. But it doesn't go unnoticed that just this month, Japan struck a bilateral deal with the EU. This is the first rate hike on beef in the country since 2003. According to AgWeb, Japan was just approaching pre-BSE import levels of U.S. beef, with exports up 30% so far this year. From fields needing a drink to fields seeing excessive rains this year, crop conditions are fading. Looking at overall conditions, we see a 2-point drop from last week, 62% now good to excellent. The Western Corn Belt is the big reason behind the decline. Iowa is down 3, Nebraska down 4. There's a big drop in soybean conditions as well. Just 57% is rated good to excellent. That's down 4 points from last week. Illinois leads the decline. It fell 8 points this past week with 59% now rated good to excellent. And in the West, Nebraska and South Dakota both seeing 4-point declines. Well, so far, drought and dryness hasn't been enough to stop growth on American ranches. The mid-year cattle inventory numbers are out from USDA. It shows the total herd is now 4% bigger than last summer at 103 million head. That's the largest herd in nearly a decade. Beef cow numbers are 7% higher, although replacement heifer numbers are actually down compared to a year ago. Analysts say the number shows beef cow herd expansion is leveling off. Well, the world's largest rice producer is hungry for more rice, and it's looking to the U.S. China announcing it will import American rice for the first time. Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue says it's a deal in the works for more than a decade. China produces 20 times more rice than the U.S. Well, international demand is changing the game for U.S. hay production. Rabobank releasing a new report showing U.S. alfalfa and other hay producers are in a good position. That's as global demand for U.S. hay is easing the oversupply producers faced in 2015 and 2016. And as demand continues to climb, Rabobank thinks hay prices will find further support. But it's hay producers in the West cashing in on that demand boom for U.S. hay. Rabobank says 7 states in the West produce 18% of hay and nearly 90% of U.S. hay exports. That includes Idaho. Driscoll Brothers is located in Aberdeen, Idaho, and they say they planted extra acres of wheat this year as they recently became partners with a group in China to export hay there.
It's kind of a mutual deal. They were looking for something. We were looking for something that because the wheat price is not up to cost of production. So we're trying to look for something a little bit different, and this come along, and it looked like it could work. There's a lot of people in China that and they're trying to get out of the lower class income and come into the middle class, and they're tasting milk, meat, proteins.
Driscoll told me they have 18 truckloads of hay a day that will go into containers and head to China. It takes 45 days for the crop to make the trip. All right, those are the headlines. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman joins us now with weather. Mike, it was another week of some viewers receiving too much rain while others saw too little.
Well, good morning, Tyne. You're absolutely right, and that's typically the case this time of the year. Of course, the really dry areas continue to be the far northern plains, but it's getting drier in parts of the central plains. Let's go back a month to see what the drought monitor looked like. You can see still a few lingering pockets of dryness in the southeast. A little farther eastward from there, there were some pockets in Oklahoma and Texas. But going through the last 4 weeks or so, you can see how things have gotten worse in the far northern plains, most of the Dakotas into eastern Montana. area, and it's getting worse in pockets throughout the Central Plains. Let's go day by day this week. Very little going on this week. High pressure dominating most of the Corn Belt, so you're not going to get much rain there. A little bit of lingering shower activity in the far northeast as we end the month of July. Scattered thunderstorms along this stationary front from Florida into the southwest. Weak front coming into the northern plains. That will move into the northern Great Lakes by Wednesday. Very slow mover, obviously, just spotty showers and thunderstorms there. High pressure is still dominating most of the east and the Corn Belt from Florida to the southwest. More thunderstorms, and we still see more of the same by Friday. That first front is moving off the northeast coast. Second one coming into the Canadian border area of the northern plains, and the stationary front from Florida down into South Texas, still causing showers and thunderstorms there. So the heat continues out west, not so much farther east. We'll have your longer range forecast coming up in our next half hour.
Thanks, Mike. Well, we'll digest these grain and livestock markets coming up on the show. Sue Martin and Brian Roach join me next. Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. On the Marketing Roundtable with me this weekend, Brian Roach and Sue Martin. We started off the show talking about crop conditions, so let's start off the roundtables talking about crop conditions. We continue to see these crop conditions decline every week. So I know it's expected that conditions are going to decline, but is it declining more so than normal?
Well, yes, it is. These crop conditions, I think what's being missed is the heat at night. That's helping that crop continue to push. And of course, we're putting the corn through, pollination. We're not totally finished with that yet. And yet the market seems to be in a little bit of denial looking at it. We think conditions will deteriorate again here this next week. And so I think that when we look at this, the bean market versus the corn, we're now just entering into bean month. But again, even though beans weren't into its full-blown reproductive stage, beans are short almost everywhere. And yet in our area, I almost think beans are looking better than the corn. It's just kind of, it depends. It's a popcorn thunderstorm summer. And those are not your summers when you really get the good yields.
Yeah, and I'll ask you about Iowa in a second. But, we're seeing some major producing states see declining crop conditions. I mean, not just where we're seeing the drought. Illinois seeing declining crop conditions. That has to fuel the market, but it's not fueling the market like some producers want at this point.
Well, at this point, you have to look at the crop ratings as only one indicator of what's really going on in the crop. And so a declining crop rating chart doesn't really mean that the crop is going to be awful. It just means average at this point. And so the things that Sue's talking about, we probably won't see the real data that drives a bullish outlook for quite a while. We have a report on the 10th of August. It probably won't be as bullish as everybody wants, but at this point, we're not talking about a crop like last year. We're talking about an average crop, and the ratings at this point say something like an average crop until we really see the data that changes that. And that's why the specs aren't interested in taking on new long positions. So we have not given the specs a real reason to cover shorts and add new longs and take us to the kind of prices that growers are going to really want to sell. I will say that the growers that have been getting the rains this week, when I drive around and I look at the kind of weather we have, low humidity, temperatures in the 80s, those areas will be doing better. The have-not areas, they probably hold their own in the corn market. And the beans, when they don't get rain, but they don't also have the heat, they probably go into some sort of dormancy phase, looking for the rain. And so for the bean crop to deteriorate any more in terms of those ratings, we need to probably go another week. We have a dry forecast for the next couple weeks. Then we'll maybe see the ratings continue to decelerate on the bean crop, which then should perk the market up on the bullish side.
So a lot of focus on Iowa. I mean, this year we're talking, it's the haves and the have-nots, right? We've been talking about that story.
Exactly.
Everyone's watching moisture in Iowa. Where's getting the, who's getting the rain, who's not. In your mind, how good is Iowa's crop?
I think Iowa's crop is not the stellar crop that we've gotten accustomed to. The western third or eastern third looks very good. It's excellent, except southeastern Iowa doesn't look too great. And then you look through the middle of the state, the heart of the state, from border to border, and it's coming down. The crop just does not have that deep green color that it normally should have. And beans, of course, through the whole state, small. If you look at western Iowa, of course, it's even more pronounced because these are areas that are just very, very dry. You know, the best chance for rain was this past week. And, you know, maybe some areas got an inch, inch and a half. But what was funny was at WHO Radio, which is the largest radio station in Iowa and has a nice big broadband listening area, at 5:30 that morning on Wednesday said, you know, called out for flood alerts through central and southern Iowa. Nothing. We got nothing. And that's just unusual. I just don't know if I can recall a time when we've had that. Radar, it can fool you. The moisture can be in the air and not make it the ground. And I think that we've got some major states here, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, a chunk of Missouri, and then even a portion of Illinois who dropped 8% in the last ratings. These are major producing corn states. Minnesota looks pretty decent, and they did get some gratification this past week with rain as well. So I think that we're looking at a situation, but here's another kicker. The weather sources we use are calling for a turn in this weather, and it's all dependent on that southwest monsoon. If it continues to grow, it should dislodge this ridge and push it eastward. There's kind of a double-edged sword there. One, then it opens up cooler temps and moisture potential for the western Corn Belt, but the eastern Corn Belt could then start to see heat and you're shallow-rooted. So it's kind of it's an interesting summer, and we won't know totally how that all plays out, but in about 10 days, that's the shift.
All right, so many unknowns, but have we put the high in this market? I'll ask Brian Roach when we come back on U.S. Farm Report. Well, we've been talking about these crop condition ratings and you know, could this fuel prices moving forward? But, you know, we've had some favorable prices, seen declines off those, but do you think that we have put the high in these markets?
Well, perhaps corn before harvest, and I'll say it that way because the way this is playing out with what we need to know about the corn crop won't come probably till closer to harvest or even afterwards, when we see how the variability in the East Coast or the eastern belt combined with the heat and pollination heat in the west and how that plays out. We may not really know that until we start to see ear weights, not just ear counts, but ear weights in September. And so for the minute, I think corn holds at 417 and a quarter high. Beans, though, I think beans have a better chance with the ratings where they are. The ratings have accelerated to the downside this week. And with the drier forecast, regardless of what happens, if it just remains dry, like I said before, the bean will it'll go into some sort of a dormancy, and if it doesn't get the rain, then it'll begin to abort, regardless of the temperature. So I think that becomes more problematic with beans, especially when you see bean demand as strong as it is. China buying 92 million metric tons of beans. So I think the demand picture in beans, with the currency tailwinds with the dollar's down 10.5% for the year. The real's up 8%, and both of those combined help us as U.S. exporters keep a bigger share than what we probably ought to. And so I think those are good tailwinds. I'm pretty optimistic the bean market into next year.
Really quick, because I want to hit on wheat conditions with you, Sue, but really quick, do you think we put the high in these markets?
No. First off, I have a derivative of an 84-year cycle low due this month in August. And I'm thinking my preference is August 3rd, 13th. There's one more date after that, but I kind of think what's going to happen is when I think the other two markets are waiting on beans to get it out of its system and turn around, and we've been holding the 200-day moving average. We've fallen back twice to that, and if we come down and just barely tag it, you know, today we still close lower for the week, and the key is we're going to close higher for the month on beans. Corn is going to close, well, that one's up for grabs because 390.5 is where you closed at the end of June. We knew we probably would not take out 374. in July, because I went back and looked at since 1970, and there's never been a time that corn has had 2 outside range months back to back. So we felt we would move into a range, and that's kind of what's happening. But I believe that the fourth quarter of this year, I think, is going to be much stronger when the realization starts to come. Keep in mind this yield dropping right now. The USDA's got us tagged at 11.9, just shy of 12%. Stocks usage ratio turns around. If we drop this yield under that 163, and a 10% drop from last year's 157, 157.5, and then if you talk trend line, you're down to 153. All of a sudden, you've got that stocks usage ratio. If you just take it under 163, you're now looking at a stocks usage ratio that's equal to 2012. Doesn't mean we have to go up, but when you have cheap prices for extended periods of time, you escalate the demand and the usage. And there's a few other things that are happening that's going to do that.
Brian, let's switch to wheat real quick. We know wheat conditions are suffering, especially spring wheat, in the dry northern plains. Wheat tour looking at lowest yields in a decade. I mean, is that enough to put fireworks in this wheat market?
We've priced in a lot of that already, and I don't know that there's a big surprise there. The Wheat Council came in with a couple bushels below where they were 8 bushels below where they were last year, and right about where the USDA is. And the crop probably continues to get smaller, especially when you look at harvested acres. But I think it'll be post-harvest that you really see the fireworks in the spring wheat, because stocks get cut drastically, almost in half potentially. And I think the OND, JFM for spring wheat is where the more powerful move will come. I mean, the market's down in a buy signal here. It's been giving growers who sold a chance to kind of come in and re-own it out into the spring. But the rest of the other classes of wheat are really there's not a bullish story there. Not yet, not quite yet. So we were aggressive sellers on sell signals the last couple opportunities, and so we're inclined to sit tight.
All right, we need to take a break, but we'll be right back for their closing thoughts. Don't go anywhere. Time now for closing thoughts. Sue?
Well, I think that when it comes to the corn market, I think first off, Friday was probably the lowest volume that we've seen since July of 2014. So very, very low trade. That's not usually what you see at a high market. I think the market's ebbing and flowing, but we're still going to come out of here. This is a corrective phase, both on wheat and corn, that will send us to much higher levels as we go into 18.
All right, thanks, Sue. Brian?
Well, the grower meetings this week, the real question is I need to sell something before harvest. What should I do? And I think there'll be rallies here in the next 30 days that growers who need to sell, generate cash, or reduce storage quantities, they're going to want to do that here in the next 30 days. And I like the idea of staying long into next year, but there are growers who have not been able to get the job done, and so they'll want to do that here in the next 30 days.
All right, thank you. Stay with us. John Phipps joins us next.
Visit farmjournalpro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight. farmjournalpro.com.
Rural broadband has been a hot topic for years, but a big announcement from a large computer company could revolutionize access for rural residents. But how long will it take? Here's John Phipps.
Earlier this month, Microsoft announced an initiative to bring high-speed broadband to rural America. About 24 million Americans do not have access to high-speed internet service, which they define as 25 megabits per second, which is pretty fast in my book. While I think this is an admirable proposal, I doubt it'll ever happen. There are some technology issues, such as the cost of equipment and reach. You have to be within about 2 miles of fiber optic cable, and user devices currently run about $800 each. Microsoft has generously offered $10 billion to help with those costs. There are legal issues with Microsoft getting control of what is called TV white space on the spectrum, and the regulatory approval process would be strongly opposed by broadcasters, among others. There are economic issues about payback, or whether there is even modest interest among very isolated citizens. But the real reason behind my indifference to this commendable idea is I've had my hopes for services like broadband or even rural water dashed by reality too many times. And the reason is simple and inexorable. Areas like mine are emptying out. You can see it on this map of population change in Iowa between 2010 and 2015. Now, I'm using Iowa because it has superb county-level data. Counties that are not blue had a 0 or negative population change. As residents become fewer and farther apart, it's almost impossible to deliver services to them except at exorbitant cost. Given the challenges Microsoft faces to accomplish this otherwise laudable goal and the time it will take to build, even if they are successful, I don't think many of the truly rural population will be there when it arrives.
Thanks, John. Well, still to come, he's an Oklahoma State cowboy striving for innovation while not veering far from the course of tradition. We'll have that story after the break.
Cowboys like us sure do have fun, racing the wind, chasing the sun, take a long way.
From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. We have much more ahead. Well, desperate times call for desperate measures in North Dakota. We'll also meet a cutting-edge Oklahoma State cowboy whose innovation isn't going unnoticed. Baxter Black is on the search for Billy the dog, and we'll learn the marketing lingo and customer support. Now for the headlines. 3 months after Monsanto pulled the plug on a deal to sell its precision planting business to John Deere, there's now a new suitor. AGCO announcing its intentions to buy Precision from Monsanto subsidiary, the Climate Corporation. The two companies have signed a definitive agreement, but the price tag is not being disclosed. In May, Monsanto said it was terminating the deal with Deere to purchase Precision Planting. The transaction had been scrutinized for months by the Department of Justice. In August 2016, the DOJ filed suit to block the acquisition, calling it merger to monopoly in high-speed planting systems. This new offer from AGCO will now undergo regulatory review. Meanwhile, a group of 19 Democratic senators are pushing back against a proposed merger of Monsanto and Bayer. The lawmakers are asking the Justice Department to conduct a thorough and impartial analysis of the proposed $66 billion deal. In a letter, the groups say the DOJ's antitrust division should carefully consider the impact this merger will have on agricultural businesses, farmers, and consumers. The companies hope to close the deal yet this year. Well, 4 wildfires have burned nearly 400 square miles of drought-plagued eastern Montana. Much of it is farmland and ranchland. Firefighters believe a lightning strike started the fires last week. The fires burned 16 homes in the sparsely populated region. Authorities are asking ranchers and other landowners to report any losses of livestock, pasture, hay, and fencing. Well, the drought monitor showing little relief for those hardest hit areas. Look at Montana. Exceptional drought, the worst level, jumped up 10 points in a week. Now nearly 12% of the state seeing exceptional drought conditions and 23.8% under extreme conditions. And just to the east, 7.6% of North Dakota is seeing exceptional drought, the worst level. And more than 45% of the state is under extreme conditions. Well, as North Dakota's drought conditions worsen, some areas are now classified as being in long-term drought. Farmers and ranchers are now forced to resort to drastic measures to deal with dry conditions that are destroying crops and pastures. Cliff Naylor reports.
Russell Wagner is cutting 400 acres of Conservation Reserve Program land for feed. It's not nearly enough forage to get his cattle through winter, so other livestock producers are cutting poor-quality small grain crops like oats, barley, and hard red spring wheat for hay.
If it can feed a cow, it'll get cut down and turn into some sort of nutrition for the animals.
Wagner feels more than 50% of North Dakota's CRP land should have been opened up for haying because the need for feed is so great and the quality of CRP is marginal.
Unfortunately, CRP hay isn't typically the highest quality because it does have a lot of old, dead material in it, so it's not going to be a very high feed value. However, it is great for a filler.
Clay McPeak is cutting 900 acres of CRP. He says it's so dry, he's chopping and baling the same day.
Some of it's a bale an acre, some of it's a little more, some of it's less. It's not real good.
Extension agent Penny Nestor says farmers may soon have more than the quality and quantity of CRP to worry about.
if we don't get rain this year, we don't get a good snowfall this year, we could have drought next year, and that just escalates the issues and the problems associated with that.
Many farmers have carryover hay from last year. That will help them get through the coming winter. But after those reserves are used up, the need for moisture will become even more critical for the 2018 growing season.
Thanks, Cliff. Well, that's it for the news. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman joins us now. Mike, we've been focused on the drought in the northern plains. Is there any relief in sight long term?
Tyne, I don't see a good chance of rain, unfortunately, for the far northern plains. Anytime you get a ridge like this, it's just going to sit there and stay hot and dry. The trough continues out east. You can see even on into Wednesday, that's the case with more energy diving in. Now, you can always get a little bit of rain in the northern plains out of these little weak disturbances kind of moving through the upper portion of the ridge, but I just don't see a real good chance. Let's take a look at our 90-day outlook. We'll split up the temperatures into the 3 months. August above normal, mid-Atlantic, southeast, northern half of the plains, most of the west above normal, below normal in eastern portions of Canada. Now by September, we're going to start introducing some below normal areas for the northwestern Gulf Coast area, much of Texas, Louisiana, above normal mid-Atlantic northeast, northern plains in the west, and October, still from the Dakotas through the west above normal, below normal, southern Mississippi Valley, and above normal along the eastern seaboard. As far as precipitation, above normal from the mid-Atlantic to the Gulf Coast into the southwest, below normal, unfortunately, for the Dakotas into Nebraska. Tyne?
Thanks, Mike. Well, our partners at Top Producer Magazine award a young producer under the age of 35 every year who demonstrate excellence in marketing, technology, environmental stewardship, and family and employee relations. The 2017 Tomorrow's Top Producer Horizon Award winner is given to Cody Goodnight of Chattanooga, Oklahoma, who is striving at keeping tradition while creating innovation. Betsy Gibbon has that story.
Swaying wheat waits to be cut as the hum of Cody Goodnight's combine rolls through these Oklahoma fields. For him, harvest is not routine, it's tradition. This family has worked these soils for 5 generations.
It's just in our blood. We can't get rid of it. It's just something we really, really enjoy.
The Chattanooga producer who holds the reins of Goodnight Farms is busy working with his crew. Nearby, a man who farmed before him.
To never get away from it. I'm not in charge anymore sort of situation, but I sure enjoy observing.
Just needs a little sunshine.
It's Cody's father, John, who pioneered the farm's foray into wheat, cotton, sesame, sorghum, soybeans, and grasslands for their cattle. One of the first in the community to no-till, curious about conserving moisture and maintaining his soil during these dusty Oklahoma seasons. Lessons Cody inherited, passed on from his father's passion.
Not only has he followed my footsteps, he's exceeded it.
We try not to just coast. We want to always be improving, and I learned that from him.
But the real work lies in never leaving the land bare, and cover crops are helping.
And one of the reasons we grow it is to help break up compaction.
Goodnight plants most row crops, except for cotton, in 15-inch rows.
The reason we do 15 is for narrower rows to get the ground covered sooner, more shade in the ground.
And they use stripper heads during wheat harvest, taking grain and leaving the straw standing.
Another big benefit is just shade and wind and water erosion protection for us in no-till versus having the straw all cut and left bare.
While Cody has grown these visions, he had a nice jump start. His dad, John, developed a certified seed wheat business, which has been a staple of the operation for more than 25 years. Annually, 40,000 bushels of seed sold to 50 growers. The number fluctuates depending on the market and demand.
It certainly gave us a niche in the market. Our seed wheat price doesn't fluctuate as much as the normal commodity prices. And it just gives us a premium for our wheat.
Goodnight saw how his dad added value in wheat and wanted to near success within the livestock sector. He evolved and changed the cow-calf operation to AIing heifers with high-end genetics.
Well, I wanted to do the same thing with heifers. I wanted to raise seed stock heifers for other people to purchase from me.
And it's in these fields at harvest the family and crew take time every night to give thanks.
You just remember what you're fighting for.
Parking the machinery, a moment to slow down.
You know, if all you're ever doing is working and slaving away from daylight till dark, what's the point?
To share a homemade meal and be together.
So we take time to just enjoy ourselves and stop and smell the roses, you might say.
Because farming through Oklahoma's unpredictable weather is not for the faint of heart, they're grateful for each year the wheat dances into harvest, bringing promise of a future and planting seeds for the next generation. Reporting in Chattanooga, Oklahoma, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Thanks, Betsy. Well, Goodnight shows heifers at the Southwest Expo and Fort Worth Stock Show every year, which is one of the oldest livestock shows in the country. His animals have placed 5 of the past 6 years, and he's even won a reserve grand champion title. All right, up next, John Fetz. During our marketing roundtables each week, many analysts throw out terminology to help your marketing plan. But it's that terminology that can leave many confused. To cut through the confusion, here's John Fitz.
Your call is very important to us. Please hold.
Loyal viewer Linda Miller lobs a tricky question my way. Market analysts constantly recommend calls and puts to help producers take out some of the risk in commodity prices. How often does the call or put actually pay out for the farmer? On the other side, is it just the analysts that come out ahead? Linda, send me an address for your mug. This is one of those debates where theory and practice don't overlap as much as you might hope. Options like puts and calls, which are essentially the right to buy or sell the underlying contract at a given price, are most frequently recommended in concert at the same time as cash market actions to act as insurance against market volatility. For example, I can make a profit if I sell corn for $4, but I'm reluctant to do so because I think the market might go up after I sell. So I could sell the corn when it's $4 and buy a $4 call for X cents a bushel that will rise in value if the market does go up. The theory here is this helps me actually pull the trigger and get the sale done. I get my $4 corn. If the market goes up, I can take advantage. If the market doesn't, I am out the option cost of X cents, but I still have corn sold for $4. Looked at this way, options are only part of how much money I make. They are often compared to insurance, and you don't expect to make money on your car insurance after all. Properly executed options should not be expected to consistently generate their own income, but rather protect income from cash sales. As I said, that's the theory. In practice, I've found it takes considerable self-discipline to stay happy with constant losses in your trading account. And more often than not, this very simple cash sale and option linkage evolves into something more complicated or even speculative trading in an effort to have your protection cake and eat it too. I speak from experience. As is constantly repeated, most options expire worthless, but that doesn't mean they haven't helped the customer make money. It may seem like analysts are the biggest winners, but if your option program doesn't help improve your profit picture, for whatever reason, farmers will stop using both options and the analyst.
Thanks, John. And if you have a question or comment for him, you can email him at mailbag@usfarmreport.com. When we come back, we're off to the west to pay a visit to Baxter Black. Well, Arizona actually seen some drought relief this week in the latest drought monitor. Hopefully Baxter Black saw some of that rain. But this week, there's more than dry weather on his mind. Here's Baxter.
Derry got a new hound dog puppy and named her Billy. Well, Billy soon adapted to the new neighborhood, and by the time she was 9 months old, she had begun to explore further afield, so it was necessary to pen her up at night. One morning, Derry went out in her comfy blue nightgown with a faded pattern of penguins and snowflakes to feed Billy. To her exasperation, Billy had flown the coop. Derry scuffled across the yard shouting, "Billy! Billy! Billy!" At the edge of the pasture, she stopped to survey the horizon. Lo and behold, she saw Billy across the pasture in the neighbor's yard. It was an acid reflux moment. Billy was racing along the ridge with an object in her jaws. white feathered object to be precise. Still yelling, Derry climbed the wire fence and Billy, Billy, and crossed the field with her penguin and snowflake nightie dragging in her wake, and caught goofy little Billy, who was delighted to show her what she had caught. And then Derry noticed that the ground around her looked like a broiler battlefield, a Campbell's soup catastrophe, a field of flattened fowl, and all the chickens were naked. Bare breasts everywhere. It looked like one of those Renaissance paintings. They had lost their feathers. Distraught, Derry went up to her neighbor's door. She confessed Billy's crime, chicken murder in the 2nd degree. She offered to pay restitution. Well, the neighbor took in Derry's appearance. Muddy up to her hips, feathers stuck to her arms and in her hair, and her nightgown dragging behind her like a bridal train at a greased pig contest. They're not dead, said the neighbor. I chased her dog away, just not in time. But your dog didn't kill them. She just plucked them all. Well, what can I do? Asked Derry. Well, the neighbor thought it over and said, well, I am a little worried about him getting a heat stroke. Oh, okay, said Derry. I'll run home and get some sunscreen. Either that, said the neighbor, or barbecue sauce. This is Baxter Black. From out there, Chicken Man.
You can hear more of Baxter's humor online at baxterblack.com. Well, when we come back, Tractor Tales with Machinery Pete. Please stay with us.
Tractor Tales is brought to you by John Deere. Where can you find the most comprehensive inventory of John Deere certified pre-owned tractors, combines, and sprayers? MachineFinder.com. Sometimes the best new addition to your fleet isn't new.
Welcome back to Tractor Tales, folks. This week we're going to head to Illinois and check out a family-owned Farmall C. This 1953 Classic Red was purchased new on the farm, and after years of hard work, this tractor has shed its work clothes for a life of parades.
This tractor was bought new here on the farm, bought new in '53 by my father-in-law before I was part of the picture here. And that was he used it to pull his 4-row corn planter and hay jobs and just small tractor jobs around the farm. And when I got here in 1963, I pulled a 4-row planter with it for a couple of years, and then it still did the hay work. And back then we used a hay rope to pull the hay in the barn. That's the tractor's job, was to pull the hay in the barn, but did a lot of hay raking and mowing and things of that nature. Today it's a show tractor. I've taken it on tractor rides. It barely goes fast enough, so I have to run the motor faster than I'd like. So I've had it on 2 or 3 rides, but it's small rides around the farm. We use it to pull hay rack. When we host people here on the farm, we'll have a hay rack ride, and that's this tractor's job. It's just basically look pretty. It's probably going to stay with the farm. I'm guessing its roots were started here, and it's probably going to stay here after I'm gone. Hopefully our kids will keep the farm going here when I'm out of the picture. So it's probably going to stay around a while.
Thanks so much. Well, this week we're heading south for our country church salute. It goes to the Camp Springs Methodist Church located in Choctaw County, Alabama. They tell us it's a rural church holding only 1 service a year, and that's a memorial to those buried in the cemetery. And during that one service, they say it brings back special memories for lifelong members. Our thanks to Nancy Watley for sharing their story. All right, stay with us. We have From the Farm photos next. Welcome back. Well, most of the West is in much better moisture situation than past years, Mike. The better than expected rainfall and snow this winter did help grass grow taller, also more vegetation, unfortunately making it the perfect breeding ground for wildfires this year.
Yeah, thousands of firefighters across 10 western states are battling wildfires right now. That includes California. And check out these pictures from Tony Tasso of Cotton Creek Ranch. It shows the burning and the aftermath. He says chutes and corrals were destroyed, and you can see the flames nearing the barn overnight.
Wow.
But at last, calm after the chaos, and he calls it peace in the aftermath. cows taking a drink, of course.
Yeah, and speaking of not enough rain, Brad Downs of Grand Forks, North Dakota, he's checking canola fields with the family. He said what hasn't got hit with hail is pretty good this year.
Which is surprising with the drought in that area. And Jason Allen, New Franken, Wisconsin, says wheat harvest is underway. They've only harvested 2 days, but are banking on decent weather on Friday and next week.
Well, Annie in Lena, Illinois says, who thought they would be kayaking to check on the corn?
Oh, wow.
Seriously, look at this picture. That's our husband, Matt. There's been too much rain in northwestern Illinois. Last weekend, they saw 7 inches of rain fall just overnight. You know, and it's really, we've said it's the haves and the have-nots, you know, as far as moisture goes. Does that continue to play out?
No, I think we are a little bit different in that respect. Those were just complexes that just kept hitting the same area. If they would have shifted even north and south a little bit. It's going to be dry in the Corn Belt, though, for a while, it looks like now. So I don't want it to get too hot.
Well, if you have any pictures you would like to send, you can do that to the address on the screen.
For all of us at U.S. Farm Report, I'm Mike Hoffman with Tyne Morgan. Thank you for watching U.S. Farm Report.
Yeah, be sure to tune in next weekend as we work to build on our tradition. Have a great weekend, everyone.
U.S. Farm Report, America's longest-lasting news program for farmers, is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups. U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast.